Hello, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Um, this is an experimental piece of worship together, so let's see how this goes. This is not a typical way we do Quaker worship, um, but we're trying an experimental thing today. So we're going to do this in a guided way, and we are going to, first of all, have four sections of 10 minutes, and I will lead us through all of that so that you know what you have ahead of us. But we'll go for about, an hour so that we have a good amount of time together. So I want to give you the image then of a lake, that we're sitting around a lake, and this at the moment, there's waves, a bit choppy perhaps. Maybe you've come from something busy, and this is an invitation to come and give yourself a chance of sitting quietly for an hour and learning this practice that we have in Quakers of settling into waiting worship. Hopefully, you'll see that these waves on the lake will gradually settle and we'll really be able to move into a deep place together. So, I want to just welcome friends who've joined me on the screen and just hear a little bit about why you decided to say yes to this experiment. The same for everyone else on the screen, really. Whoever's joined us listening into this, you've said yes to this today. So, Harvey, let's come to you first. Thank you for saying yes to giving this a go. Why did you agree to this?
Well, the phrase which has come to me is I like exploring the continent of the soul. And you gave an image of a lake. Well, I've been walking around various lakes all my life. And on my journey through the continent of the soul, I see myself as a pilgrim. And I love meeting other pilgrims and sharing their experience.
Hmm, that's great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Sarah, what made you say yes to this experiment today?
Well, I'm quite happy to try new things, but I'm particularly interested in the ways that we might make Quaker worship more accessible to people who are not very easy with silence. I actually took a friend who's not been to a Quaker meeting today to meeting, and he said after 10 minutes he kind of thought, "Yikes, I don't know how I'm going to survive this." Which was very different from my experience, but to me it felt like we're just sinking down. So, I think there's work to be done here, and I'm interested in seeing different ways of yes, being more open to other people.
Hmm, great. Well, I really appreciate your support, so thank you for being here. And Gordon, thank you for joining us. What made you say yes to this?
Well, I think it's partly your venture with Quakerology in trying to bring something in a different way to YouTube and people that watch YouTube about Quakerism. And perhaps Quakerism or Quakers have not always been good at being able to show the world through YouTube or whatever how we do being a Quaker. So I think I've been very excited by what you've done and the invitation to be part of this. I thought, well, this will be another step. Yeah, so I thought, well, no, I'm nervous for this, but that's okay. That's part of being in a meeting for worship. So it's not totally predicted. So and that's how it should be.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you very much. It's an act of courage really, isn't it, to take a step into something like your friend today, Sarah. So let's settle then. I know we do this easily. Um, but I'll just give a little bit more guidance than we might usually. So we're going to spend the rest of this first 10 minutes together, settling in and relaxing and just imagining that lake. And already perhaps the waves have settled and becoming calmer. I want you to imagine that every time we hear some spoken ministry, we have a disruption, or perhaps we find ourselves distracted. Each time we come back to this image, and even perhaps if a pebble has been thrown into this lake, it's soon absorbed. The water will hold it, and the ripples will move outwards, and calm will return. So this guided meeting for worship today will be in stages. This is the first one, centering down into the stillness. And then we'll have a 10-minute section, opening our hearts to God. And in that section, I'll read us something from our advices and queries. And we'll hear some ministry from Harvey. And then in the next 10 minutes, we'll have listening to the Spirit. And we may hear from Gordon if he feels led to minister. And then we'll have a section of faith into action. And we may hear from Sarah. So I'll keep you guided throughout this time, but let's settle now into some quiet, waiting worship. So we've already been 10 minutes on this call together. Hopefully you feel centered and still. So let's move now into opening our hearts to God. And I'm going to read from Advices and Queries number 2. Bring the whole of your life under the ordering of the Spirit of Christ. Are you open to the healing power of God's love? Cherish that of God within you, so that this love may grow in you and guide you. So we'll wait to hear now to see if there is ministry from Harvey when he feels ready.
When I first looked at these words, I was a bit overwhelmed. Bring the whole of your life under the ordering of the Spirit of Christ. What on earth does that mean to me? I'm fascinated by theology, but I always want to know what's behind the words that I hear, and also how other people might understand them. So if I speak now, I'm going to speak from a personal perspective, but as a Quaker, so both as a Quaker in general, but from a particular point of view. To me, the fundamental conviction of the Quaker way is that there is something sacred, divine, something of God in each human being, in each and every human being. And that itself is a very difficult one, given the world situation at the moment, when I personally am very angry with various people in the world political situation. So I have to take that extremely seriously and as a challenge. To me, the word Christ does not just refer to historical Jesus of Nazareth. I'm aware that the word Christ means anointed. And I feel that my reading of Christianity is that each human being with this sacredness within them is anointed, as it were, for a particular life, not as a rule, not as a law which you just read from a text, but as Jesus says, I come to bring you life and life in abundance. And I've often wondered what life in abundance actually meant. I'm also aware that when there is a deep encounter with another human being, I find something illuminated within myself. We talk about answering that of God, not just that there is God. That becomes a sort of creedal statement, but an action, how we are called upon to answer that of God in the other. And that means bringing forth that of God within ourselves as well. Another word besides the word Christ, I might use as midwife. I see us as midwives to each other, giving birth to a recognition of the divine within each other. Not easy to find it in oneself, not easy to find it in other people, but with the hope, with the conviction that the world is essentially sacred. And our role is to A, to witness to the sacredness, and B, to enhance it insofar as we can. And then you have the second question, are you open to the healing power of God's love? And my answer is perhaps, sometimes, maybe. I sometimes make a terrible mess of it. I'm a very angry person, for good or for bad reasons. But I do find that when there is this depth of relationship, it is indeed a healing power. I am healed, and I dare to hope that some healing has taken place in this relationship. And that leads us to the third sentence, cherish that of God within you. Do I actually cherish that of God within you? One of my lines, which irritates one of my friends, is there are certain days when I tell God I'm an atheist. It's as though I don't have that link. I don't find it. I don't pretend even to have any. It feels as though I've lost the spiritual link. And yet, my basic conviction is that somehow one never fully loses that link. And I joined Quakers because I know, as a terrific individualist that I am, that I need the community to keep me on the path, to challenge me, to test me, to make sure that I'm not just using empty words, but I'm actually living and cherishing that healing possibility. So I do indeed hope that this love may grow in me and guide me on days of darkness and of days of light. And as I get older, thinking of my mortality, I dare to dream that the power of love does not end when this body or this particular consciousness declines.
Now that's been 20 minutes. And we'll move now into listening to the Spirit. Let's leave a bit more space yet before I read the next advice and query. This is advices and queries number 3. Do you encourage in yourself and in others a habit of dependence on God's guidance for each day? Hold yourself and others in the light, knowing that all are cherished by God. And we'll hear from Gordon now, as and when he feels ready to give us vocal ministry.
When you gave us the image, Emma, of the stone going into the lake and that ripple, the image I got was actually a fish jumping out of a river, which they do more commonly than I knew. And that reminded me that often in worship, I feel I'm going underwater, snorkeling. It reminds me of snorkeling. I'm going to I'm going to a place that I don't always go in in the everyday. So I'm going to a spiritual place, and as the fish jump out of the water, they go to a place that they're not always familiar with, but they're curious about, and they do it for all sorts of reasons. And so, in a reverse, we in a meeting for worship go to a place under the water as if a spiritual place where we can be touched by the Spirit of God. And so when I hear this advice, I hear someone asking me a question. Do you? And I think, who is asking me this question? So there's a relationship already. And of course, the question comes from near on 400 years of the Quaker way, where people have discerned together questions for the spiritual life, questions for the community. Do you encourage in yourself? The questioner asks first, and then others. Relationships. And as I ponder this, or have pondered this, I look at my own experience, and certainly over this past 25 years, my need for God's guidance is daily. In more recent years, I have more tasks in a day than I can complete. And that creates confusion and anxiety within me. And so daily I find I turn to God and say, which one should I do? Which one next? Some people might call that intuition. And it is intuition, but it's within a relationship with the divine. To encourage it in others, for me, I think, is to live it out as I do, and as if anyone's curious enough to ask, I will say this. And then hold yourself and others in the light, knowing that all are cherished by God. Noting yourself first, and then others. And if I link this, the light, my own experience is, it is to live in the moment. And often I find myself not in the moment. And so if I make the moment the light and not the moment the darkness, when I'm feeling in the darkness of confusion or anxiety, it's my cue to move into the light. Light where there is light, and where there is love. But I also see, in holding others, that people, I included, can, for all sorts of reasons, sickness, life, fall out of the light, fall out of peace and love and all the things that the light conveys. And so when I see holding, I see it like this relationship, that we hold each other, and that when one falls, another holds. When I fall, another holds. And so we see in that community, and we see in that all are cherished by God.
So that's been 30 minutes that we've spent together. Again, let's hold a few more minutes quiet as we move into faith into action. I'm going to read part of Advices and Queries 27. Let your life speak. When decisions have to be made, are you ready to join with others in seeking clearness, asking for God's guidance and offering counsel to one another? Let's wait again. We might hear from Sarah when she's ready.
This advice and queries asks us to think about our community And for me today, I went to meeting for the first time for a month, to my own meeting. And it was really wonderful to be back. I felt the kind of warm embrace of the community there. They were a funny lot, as all Quakers are, but very dear to me. When I think about our collective discernment, since I've been a Quaker, which is just about 7 years, there haven't been big issues that we've had to deal with, like the selling of the meeting house or anything like that. But there have been times of fracture in different relationships within the meeting. And what I've experienced has been quite different to anything I've experienced before, which is, of course, there have been times when we've talked directly to each other, tried to work things out. But actually, more important than that has been the way the community has somehow, like that picture of fungi under the ground, the mycelium holding together in ways that are not completely seen and understood. The way the community has somehow managed to regroup and heal itself and come to a different place where that fracture and those people who had been in difficult place with one another were somehow reset and able to come back together in communion with one another. And that to me was a really amazing thing. And as someone who tends to think that I need to take action, I found that actually it was okay just to let go and let be. And somehow, in quite a mysterious way, the action of the group as a whole was able to find a resolution. So it's ironic in a way, the faith in action, my kind of allotted slot. Um, but I think one of the main things that I've learned through my time in Quakers is that you don't always have to take action. In a way, that sort of community space for action to happen is one that you can trust. And and somehow kind of offering up the outcome, not being attached to the outcome, um, but letting it be as it will be is a real place of healing, which has quite surprised me.
So we've been in worship together for 40 minutes. Let's have 10 minutes now of open worship. And nothing is planned, but anything might happen.
I think it's very significant that without using the word interconnectedness, we are all talking about relationship. And I think it's also very important to bear in mind that we, in Britain anyway, and in several other places in the world, we are known as the Religious Society of Friends. And reflecting on the word friend, it strikes me that the value of friendship is about equality, respect, love, truthfulness, and peacefulness. And in our different ways, I think we're all pointing to these values, which I think Quakers do cherish.
So, friends, we've had 50 minutes together in worship. So let's close the last 10 minutes or so with what we call afterwards, your reflections. How has that been? This is an unusual experience for people used to Quakers. So let's come to you, Harvey, first then. Remember to unmute yourself, all of you. What did you think of that, Harvey? How has that been?
I don't know. What did I think of it? As an experience, I'm always surprised. I mean, I am an archetypical extrovert, which means I never quite know what I'm going to say until I've said it. And then I think, should I have said it at all? So in order to know what comes to my mind, I have, as it were, to verbalize it. Now, many Quakers are quite introverted. That's why they like the silence. And there's a different thing for me. All I can say is I liked the experience. However that comes over, I do not know to anyone watching this. But I actually enjoyed the experience. And I think it's nice in the spiritual life to say, I enjoyed it. And I did.
That's great. Well, we enjoyed you being here as well. So, thank you. Let's come to Gordon then, in the same order that we've been going round. What was that for you? What was that like for you, Gordon?
So I think different people have different physical experiences, and one of them for me is particularly in meetings and meetings for worship and where I'm a minister, is that I always have tears in my eyes, and not like you'll see them flooding down my face or anything, but yeah. And so with this experience, the longer it went on, the more that became. So it's different, obviously, from a meeting for worship in the normal sense that we had the advice and queries beforehand, and we had some time, or at least I had some time to ponder it. Um, yeah, but it was a meeting for worship, and it's 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 it's
It is, yeah.
it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was. It was lovely to hear from you, and it's great to have your feedback. Let's come to Sarah then. What did you make of that, Sarah?
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. It was good to be asked to speak because I don't think I would have spoken otherwise. I mean, I tend not to speak in meetings for worship, and um, sometimes I do, but sometimes I get told off by people. Um, so it was good to be asked to speak and to I mean, I think all of the readings in different ways emphasized that the sense that everyone has gifts, and the earlier part of that advice that you gave me talked about people's gifts, and um, sometimes it's easier to see other people's gifts than one's own. So I enjoyed actually being asked to speak, and therefore making myself I'm one of your introverts, Harvey. Um, but I thought it was good. I thought the guided um, way. I think it could have been a bit longer. To me, the 10 minutes wasn't quite long enough. Um, so each of the sections seemed a little bit too much talking and not enough quiet. But um, but yeah, as a structure, I thought it was good. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I asked. Isn't it interesting that we feel that there's so much talking, And yet, some of the people who are not familiar with Quakers think there's so much silence. So, if somebody watches this and is left wanting more silence, then I think that's a pretty good outcome, isn't it?
Mm.
So, well, thank you so much to all of you. It's it's great to have everyone's support in doing this, and I've very much enjoyed it as well. So, thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Emma.